Now, for many parts of the world, we are well and truly into the winter. The temperature is changing, the temperature's dropping, and the daylight hours are dwindling. I think it's fair to say that for many of us, our motivation to get onto the bike is hard to come by at this time of the year. You're certainly not alone, but rather than hanging up your bike until the spring arrives, there are ways in which we can still enjoy riding over the winter. So here at GTN, I've got some tips on how to enjoy the winter riding and how to get the most out of it. Right then, let's start by addressing the cold, because as far as I'm concerned, this is one of the biggest barriers to getting ourselves out of the door during the winter months. The idea of just wearing a short sleeve and some shorts during the summer months feels like a lifetime ago. Now, the idea of going out in the cold and the wet can be a serious battle. So let's start by breaking it down into the elements. First off, talking about our extremities, so our hands, our feet, and our head. If we can keep those warm, we are off to a promising start. So first off, our head, obviously if we can keep that warm, that is a big area that a lot of heat can escape through. So if we can wear a lightweight beanie that can fit nicely underneath our helmet, that is going to help immensely. And then of course we've got our hands. I know a lot of people struggle with their hands on winter rides. I do hugely. And there's a big difference between summer gloves, some cheap gloves, and some proper winter gloves. So some nice winter gloves that I've got here can make a big, big difference. And a big tip, make sure that you've got an overlap from the gloves to your long sleeve to really trap that heat in. And then of course, our feet. Make sure you've got yourself some overshoes, perhaps even some under socks. I've even gone as far as actually putting plastic bags over my feet before putting socks on and then my shoes. I wouldn't recommend that for every day of the week, but it does work in extreme circumstances. And then onto our body and base layers, they are worth their weight in gold. Not only are they an extra layer for warmth, but also they help to wick sweat away from our body and prevent them from getting cooler and being soaking wet. And then you'll really want to think about your layering. So having a long sleeve over that, perhaps even a gilet, and maybe another layer on top of that, perhaps even a waterproof. In fact, I would go as far as saying, take a waterproof with you, preferably one that you can pack down into your back pocket on any ride during the winter, just in case you get caught out. Now, it goes without saying that visibility is crucial at this time of year. The simple fact is that to be safe, we need to be seen. And there's a couple of fundamental ways in which we want to achieve this. One, through our clothing, wearing bright and fluorescent clothing, and also lights on our bike. You almost want to make it impossible to be missed out on the road. So let's start with the clothing. Obviously, as I mentioned, you want to wear bright fluorescent clothing as I'm wearing right now. And as you may have noticed, I'm wearing some dark tights. You often find that with thermal tights this time of year. However, many of them do have some reflective strips on the back of them so that you can be seen. The same goes for gloves, overshoes, helmets. Quite often you'll find that they have reflective strips on them. So if you are investing in any at the moment, then you want to make that a requirement, a standard requirement. And then with the lights on your bike, goes without saying, these should be standard both for front and a rear. You want to make sure they're an adequate strength so that you can be seen, and maybe even to see should you get caught out in the dark. And then of course, just make sure they're fully charged at the end and before each of your rides. Now, the winter time isn't only harsh on us as a rider, but also our trusty steeds. Now, we're always told to look after our bikes all year round, but let's be honest, how many of us actually do that? But during the winter, this is a must. Now, admittedly, when you get in from a cold winter ride, the first thing on your mind is to jump into the shower. And that's fair enough. But if you're not too cold and wet, then I would really recommend cracking on with it, getting that bike clean as soon as you possibly can. Of course, if you are soaking wet and freezing cold, jump in the shower, but come back to it straight away. And the first areas you really want to look to, the key details, are the drivetrain. So the chain, the cassette, the chain rings, and the derailleur. Make sure that they're nice and clean, well lubed again. And then of course, the brakes, both rim brake and disc brakes. So on the rim brakes, just making sure the rims are nice and clean, the calipers are nice and clean and working well. disc brakes, making sure that you've got those discs, the rotors nice and clean too. Keep on top of all of that and you'll have a bike that you'll keep enjoying all year round and through the winter. If you don't do that, you may find yourself having some mechanical mishaps through the winter and worse, perhaps some costly mistakes. Now for some of you out there, you may just have one bike that you use all year round, and that is absolutely fine. You may have the luxury of having some nice fancy race wheels on that bike. If so, I would highly recommend that you take them off during the winter months, pop on some shallower, more durable, harder wearing wheels, and then you put your race wheels back on during the race season. Others out there, you may have multiple bikes, maybe even a winter hack or a cyclocross bike for those really grubby days, and that's great, that's the ideal. But regardless of how many bikes you have, there are some adaptations that we suggest you make for the winter months. So first off is mud guards, which you'll notice I don't actually have on my bike just yet, but these are almost a requirement for any group ride, particularly any club rides, because not only is going to save you, but also other riders from the spray on the road, or as much as possible. And then one of my personal favorites is the tires. I'd really recommend swapping out your tires for something more durable, harder wearing, that's going to help prevent punctures, but also maybe something that's slightly wider, that's going to help improve comfort for those longer rides over the winter. Okay then, the big question, what sort of duration should we be looking at for our winter rides? Should we still be looking at kind of the same duration for our long rides over the summer period? Well, this is very much dependent on the weather and also your resilience. Of course, there is an element of just sucking up and getting on with it, but equally, we don't want to dig ourselves a deep, dark hole and almost negate any training benefit altogether, potentially even running the risk of getting ill because we've spent so long being cold in the wind and the rain out on our bikes. Now, also, we do have the option of the cafe stop, one of my favorites. Something to look forward to on those cold winter rides, and also an opportunity to break it up and warm yourself up. Again though, try to strike the balance between your riding and spending time in the cafe, because trust me, it's quite hard to get going after 2 coffees and a few cakes later. And finally, embrace the turbo. Be content that not every single ride has to be outside. In fact, the indoor trainer is actually a very efficient use of time. You get a lot of bang for your buck on it. Instead of battling with road conditions, terrain, stop signs, traffic lights, you can crack on with the workout within minutes of starting on an indoor trainer. However, if you are dead set on getting outdoors, perhaps you spent all week indoors working on the indoor trainer already, you can always split your ride up. Do half of it outside and then come back and do the other half indoors. I know a lot of professional athletes that do the same. They may do an hour or 2 outside, just nice, easy riding, then they come back for an hour or 2 of hard work on the indoor trainer, maybe even with a shower in between to warm themselves up. Well, there we go. That is all for today's video. One final tip is actually around hydration. During the winter, it's one of the last things we think to do because we are cold. We feel like we're not sweating or perspiring as much, but we still are, and we are still losing electrolytes. So make sure you stay hydrated during the winter months, particularly on those long rides. I hope you have enjoyed today's video. If so, please do give it a like, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to give GTN a follow over on social media and give us a subscribe just down below.